Orengall is a pretty easy pact to get in Soulframe since it's a quest reward from a fable you can do early on in the game, and yet it is also one of Soulframe's most powerful pacts, so let's talk about how its abilities and upgrades work and look at two different Orengall builds. Orengall's Pact is a reward from the She-Wolf Snared fable. I talked about this quest already in my P10 content guide, but I'll put a link below with the timestamp if you want a walkthrough. After the fable is done, you'll still need to craft the pact with 2 Volcanae and then claim it when the crafting time is complete. The first ability you get with Orengall is Werewalker. This turns you into a big wolf with a wonderfully high run speed, but your envoy's body will be left behind where you were standing. If your body takes damage while you're in wolf form, you will get transported back to it, so if you want to use Werewalker to travel the map, make sure to cast it in a safe location. Werewalker's base duration is 40 seconds, and this increases by 1 second for every point you have in spirit. If you're still in wolf form when the duration runs out, you'll get teleported back to where your body is, but if you perform an attack or a finisher, your envoy will appear at that location even if you don't hit anything. This makes Werewalker an excellent mobility skill. Mounts are coming to Soulframe eventually, but in the meanwhile, Werewalker is the fastest way to cross the map. I really hope DE doesn't nerf this, at least until they give us mounts instead. That said, Werewalker isn't just for movement. It can also perform a special finisher that deals 1000 damage to an enemy, allowing you to one-shot most mobs and even some bannerets. It is a bit finicky though. You have to make sure the finisher icon is up when you attack, otherwise your attack will be a bite that deals a flat 150 damage. If you get hit by an enemy while in wolf form, you will get hard locked onto whoever hit you. You will only be able to move towards that enemy and will only be able to perform your finisher on that target. You don't have any health in wolf form and thus can't be killed, but you can take stagger. You won't see this reflected on your stagger bar, but it's still there, and if your stagger bar breaks, your wolf will just stand there hunched over for an unfortunately long time, eating up your Werewalker's duration. This means the best way to use Werewalker's finisher is to run up to the enemy you want to kill as quickly as possible and finish them before anything else attacks you. Orengall's second ability is Pack Hunter, which summons a wolf to fight alongside you. You're only supposed to have 2 wolves at a time, although at time of recording you can summon a third by using the ability again while in Werewalker. If that doesn't work anymore by the time you watch this, then they've finally patched it out. Your wolves have no health, so they can't die in combat, but they do have a duration that scales with your spirit. They also seem to have a taunt, drawing aggro to them within a modest range. This is obviously a great help if you love using ranged weapons, but they are also very helpful for melee enjoyers. It seems like taking damage is a big part of what makes the soft lock targeting system get confused about who you want to fight. If all the enemies are attacking your wolves instead of you, then it's much easier for you to attack who you want because the game won't be locking you onto enemies that hit you while you're trying to finish your target. Your wolves do damage when they attack, and the amount of damage they do scales with your courage. They also deal stagger with your attacks, which does not seem to scale but is definitely quite meaningful and arguably more impactful than their damage. If you really like finishers, these wolves are going to be your best friends. Orengall's third ability is Howl. This is an AoE buff that doubles courage and increases smite chance for all allies it affects. It can also charm Odin dogs, even the really big ones, making them fight as your allies, but they will become enemies again when the charm ends. Howl's buff duration scales with your spirit, but its charm on enemy dogs has a much shorter base duration and weaker spirit scaling. Howl's buff will not stack if you cast it again while it is still active, nor will its duration refresh. Orengall's unique pact upgrades are Soulbound and Feral. Feral causes Orengall herself to periodically show up and murder an enemy. The more points you have in Feral, the more often she comes to kill a target. Soulbound provides a damage increase that scales with the number of allies within range. This can have some interesting interactions for other players, but for you as the envoy using the pact, the damage increase from Soulbound is a nice extra boost, especially since your wolves will count as allies for the buff. So let's talk builds. I'm not going to include attunement-swapped weapons in this at all, since Blessed Joinery is still way too annoying to get and we have no idea how Joinery is going to change in the future. As you may have noticed already, Grace doesn't do much for Orengall. The only thing that scales with Grace is the range of Howl's buff, but you can easily get around this by just standing close to whoever you want to receive your Howl. It does appear that your wolves can get buffed by Howl based on the blue smoke visible on them, but if it does affect them, then the boost is weak enough that it's not very noticeable in actual gameplay. So mostly you're going to use Howl to buff yourself or other players who can just stand near you, which means you don't need any points in Grace. Orengal definitely benefits the most from Spirit, but Howl's Courage buff makes it an interesting one to use with Courage-attuned weapons, so the first build we're going to look at is just that, a boosted Courage build. This is a build you can run with any Courage-attuned weapon you like. Orengall is a great pack to pair with weapons like Ignimora and Blitzel, since Howl will make their very low smite chance a bit more bearable. However, Howl's smite buff is multiplicative, not additive, so if the weapon's base smite chance is low, then they won't get as much out of the Howl as a weapon with a higher base smite chance. If you love the weapon and want to use it anyway, then Orengall is a good choice to make it work, but otherwise you'll get better results from your Howl by using a weapon with a higher base smite chance. Howl does calculate smite chance after motes and upgrades, so whatever weapon you choose, make sure you take combat arts that will boost your smite. For our pact upgrades, we first want to max out Akin for cooldown reduction. We will need 100% uptime on Howl for this build, which you can't get without maxing Akin. Then we'll max out Sympathy, as this will be our primary source of healing. What you do from here depends on how many virtue points you have to spend on your envoy. You're going to need to get your courage to half your weapon's attunement cap, and this will be a different number for each weapon. To find your weapon's attunement cap, you'll either have to add points to courage until you stop seeing its damage increase, or just check the wiki I linked below. Don't forget to add pact motes if you have them. You only need to get to half your attunement cap because even though Howl can buff your courage much higher if you put more points in courage, your weapon damage still won't scale past its attunement cap. You might be tempted to take more courage to buff your wolves, but that damage scaling is pretty weak, and Orengall in general benefits more from spirit than from courage. You're better off taking just enough courage to maximize your weapon damage and putting the rest of your resources elsewhere. If you can get your courage to half your attunement cap without putting any pact upgrades into Mora's Pride, then just max Eridus' Favor and Soulbound and put the last point into Voided for extra damage on Smite. If you need help getting to half your attunement cap, then put just enough points into Mora's Pride to get you there, and then put the rest into Eridus' Favor, Soulbound, and Voided. Once you've hit half your weapon's attunement cap in Courage, any leftover virtue points should go into Spirit to boost your durations. For your sidearm, both Preckley's and Grin can be effective here. It's entirely up to your personal preference. If you have the weapon mote that boosts smite chance, definitely use it. I didn't pick that one, and there's no way to change your mind later, so I'm showing you both of these builds without it. They get even stronger with it though, so if you have it, use it. The only trick to using this build is remembering to recast Howl as soon as but not before your last Howl runs out. There's no UI indicator for Howl's buff, so you just have to watch for the blue smoke around your hands to disappear. As soon as it's gone, Howl again. Your weapon damage will rely on your Howl boosting your courage to your weapon's attunement cap, so if it runs out, you won't do as much damage. When your Howl is up though, you and your pack are going to be an absolute terror to all your enemies. Our Spirit build is the strongest Orengall build, and it's what makes this pact contend with Ode Tempest for being one of the best in the game. It relies on the fact that Howl's courage scaling for the smite buff is relatively weak, but the base multiplier is quite strong, and spirit-attuned weapons tend to have a higher base smite chance than courage-attuned weapons. While you can get similar numbers with a full courage build, it will leave you with no room for error on your Howl cooldown, so in my opinion, a spirit build gives you much more comfortable gameplay with an equally strong performance. Pact upgrades for our Spirit build are essentially the same as our Courage build, except you don't need to worry about Mora's Pride at all, even if you don't have many virtue points to spend. You can just put everything into Eridus' Favor, Soulbound, Akin, and Sympathy, and again drop that last point into Voided for extra smite damage. Make sure your motes boost Spirit and Smite as much as possible, and then put all your virtue points into Spirit. For your weapon, you want to use whichever one you have that is attuned to Spirit and has the highest smite chance after applying combat arts and motes. Gwilyn, Odiak, and the Royal Tines are all equally strong here. Theoretically, the Royal Tines are a bit stronger since you can use Vaunt and Spectre Strike for even better smite chance, but realistically your wolves are going to be holding aggro, so there won't be many chances for parry or perfect dodge. Verdigris is the obvious choice for a sidearm, being the only one that is spirit attuned. Once again, you'll want to have your Howl up as much as possible, but the timing is much more forgiving on a spirit build. Your weapon should be at or over attunement cap regardless, so you want Howl for the smite chance, not the damage. Oh, that smite chance though. On this build, my spirit weapons get an insane 24% smite chance, and I don't even have the weapon mote that would boost it to around 36%. This will have you smiting so often that sympathy will almost always be active, making you nearly immortal. This build is so strong it easily competes with Ode Tempest's Atmos and Astrospheres, and if we do eventually get some kind of extra weapon functionality that's charged up through smites, Oringal will definitely become the leader of the pack. And that is why I've been so obsessed with getting a spirit bow. In fact, the only reason I don't use Oringal more often already is purely aesthetic. The giant metal claws on this pact arm look awesome on their own, but they look extremely awkward with weapon animations, especially bows. Maybe this is a bit silly because it is a game after all, but the claw actually makes me kind of anxious when I'm using a bow. Having your string break while you're shooting is pretty dangerous in real life, and something about the giant knives on my string hand make me feel like that's constantly about to happen. The claw is a really cool looking design, I just wish they'd make it into a short blade we could use as a weapon instead of having it fixed to Orengal's arm. If it weren't for the claw, Orengal would be my favorite pact, but the anxiety just gets to me after a while, and I've got to play something else. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Orengal and that it turns you too into a howling nightmare to the Ode. If you found this video helpful, please consider helping out my channel with a like, comment, or subscribe. And until next time, happy hunting!